Hi everyone, my name's Dan and today I'm doing a comparison between two smartwatches, the Amazfit Verge and the Amazfit Stratos. Now, I very recently reviewed the Amazfit Verge, which is the newest smartwatch from Amazfit, it's kind of a Xiaomi company in case you didn't know, and the Amazfit Stratos, which has been a very popular smartwatch from Amazfit as well. It's kind of their most expensive model, and they are kind of designed for different people, for different circumstances, and yeah, so I'm going to go through everything you need to know about the Amazfit Verge and the Amazfit Stratos and the difference between them. Hopefully by the end of this video you should be able to choose between them. So without further delay, let's get started. So I'm going to give you some of the basic specs of each watch very quickly, just the main things, not going to go into huge amounts of detail, but we'll go very quickly through them. So let's start with the Amazfit Verge. It's got a 1.3-inch AMOLED color display with a resolution of 360 by 360. It's got 512 megabytes of RAM powering the operating system and also 4 gigabytes of internal memory. Now, as for hardware, it's got an optical sensor, it's got a heart rate sensor, an accelerometer, a gyroscope, a geomagnetic sensor, a ambient light sensor, and a wearing detection sensor. It's also got a microphone and a speaker, so you can use the Verge to receive and make calls from your wrist. It's got an IP68 water resistance rating, so you can take it in the shower or get it a little bit wet, but you can't really take it underwater for any length of time. And finally, it's got a 280 mAh battery, which lasts roughly 5 days. Now, onto the Stratos. It's got a 1.34-inch transflective LCD screen. The screen has a resolution of 320 by 300. It's also powered with 512 megabytes of RAM and a 4 gigabytes of internal memory. It's got a heart rate sensor, an accelerometer, a gyroscope, a barometer, and a compass. The Stratos doesn't have a microphone, so you cannot take calls on the Stratos itself. It will alert you to when someone is calling you with some information, and it will tell you who's calling, but you cannot actually take the call. You'd need to go to your phone and actually speak on that rather than using the watch itself. However, on the other hand, it is fully waterproof up to 50 meters, so you can take it swimming, you can take it into water, you can go swimming with it, keep it on your wrist, and it will be fine. It also has a 280 mAh battery, which lasts roughly 5 days. Probably the biggest difference between these two watches is actually the screen. They're using different technologies, completely different, and they have strengths and weaknesses. AMOLED display, and the strengths of that kind of screen is the fact that it can display much brighter colors, very, very deep blacks. It's got a faster refresh rate, generally looks very bright and very clear. However, the downside is that it drains the battery faster, which can be an issue for smartwatches. Obviously, you don't want a dead smartwatch on your wrist. It also is quite hard to see in direct sunlight. I mean, if you're outside and the sun was blaring, you would struggle maybe to see it properly, and you'd have to move it around a bit. And also, it can't always be on. If it was always on, it would drain the battery very, very quickly. Obviously, you can even see here on my wrist, like the Verge is off now, but the Stratos, as you can see, is on, displaying the time. So yeah, moving on to the Stratos, the LCD screen, transflective LCD screen of the Stratos. So the strength of the LCD screen is that it uses much less battery, so it lasts a lot longer. You can have it on all the time, so it's always displaying something, and it's much easier to view in direct sunlight or under direct light. And it doesn't have as much color bleed, color saturation, like too much brightness. It kind of keeps everything in check, and the icons are very sharp. However, the downside is that the resolution isn't as high. It's not nearly as colorful or as vibrant. It looks has got a bluish tinge to it the whole time, and yeah, it's just not very, it doesn't pop. The colors don't pop. Now, I've been showing you both screens as I've been talking, so you can obviously have made some conclusions based on that, but let me show you what they look like together. And as you can see, I mean, there is a big difference between them. The Verge is a lot brighter, the colors look a lot better, I mean there's no denying it, and it is a lot brighter in terms of even the whites, and the blacks are a lot deeper. I mean, I just think it's a more attractive screen in general. Time and the colors and the way it moves, I think just looks superior to the LCD screen on the Stratos. Saying that, the LCD screen is always on, which is a benefit for a watch. But yeah, that is basically the main difference between the two, and you will have to decide which one is more important for you. I will say, however, that the Verge does kind of rectify the fact that the display isn't always on, because it has a motion detector, and it detects when you're wearing it and when you're looking at it. So if you make the motion to look at your watch like that, and the display will turn on automatically, and it turns off automatically when you move it away. So it's actually quite hard for me to show you in time because it turns off. Both screens are very touch responsive. I've not had any issues. I mean, if I had to really give it to one of them, maybe the Stratos is slightly more quicker to respond to touchscreen, but it's literally barely noticeable. Both screens are super touch responsive, and I have had no issues with lag or slowness in that regard. Now let's just look at the actual design of the watches themselves, because there's a big difference here, and I will say right from the start that the Stratos looks so much better than the Verge in basically every way. I mean, just being on the wrist, like, it just looks much more premium. It looks better in just the materials, everything about it. I mean, it's basically all glass or metal, and then even the plastic that they use is very hardened, textured plastic. It might even be like a polycarbonate actually, whereas the Verge is basically all plastic, kind of very, like, the color, it doesn't even look good. It's half gray, half light gray. You can get different colors which look slightly better, but this one particularly is not very attractive. The plastic kind of goes slightly above the screen, so it kind of sticks out quite a lot. I don't think it looks very good. I think it looks really bland and basic. Although saying that, the Verge was never really designed to be like a style fashion watch. It's designed to be a fitness watch, a fitness smartwatch, designed for when you're working out, when you're going for a run, when you're just lounging about the house or just doing basic stuff. But it does its job. The materials on the Verge are still good. They're not cheap. They just don't particularly look that attractive. If that's not a problem for you, not everyone wants a super stylish watch. But if you are looking for a stylish watch that looks good on the wrist, then the Stratos is way ahead in basically every way. Now, onto the tracking and the hardware, because there are some differences here as well. Even though the Stratos is slightly more expensive than the Verge, it's about $200 or maybe slightly cheaper and around about £170. It doesn't have as good hardware, basically. The Verge is newer. It has an upgraded heart rate sensor. It has upgraded software to make the tracking more accurate, but particularly the heart rate sensor is more accurate. So yeah, I found the heart rate sensor on the Verge to be better. The heart rate sensor on the Stratos is still fine. I found it struggles when actually you're not doing activities. It struggles to measure your accurate heart rate. So for example, me sitting here. But when I'm working out, the Stratos still seems to be able to do it quite accurately. But even any of these kind of heart rate trackers that have this, this little light that flashes, that's how it tracks your heart rate, they're never going to be 100% accurate. As for everything else, like the pedometer, there's tracking, calories tracking, GPS, I should mention both watches have GPS, and they both work around about the same, reasonably well. Not super accurate, not as accurate as your phone, but still pretty good. So both of them in that respect are pretty good and pretty much the same. Now the Stratos actually does have one more sensor that the Verge does not have, and that's a barometer, which measures your altitude. So, I mean, well, I've not personally had much use for this, but I guess if you are going mountain climbing, if you're a hiker, if you go on bike trails that go up and down hills or something, I don't know, then obviously the Stratos is going to measure your altitude. I'm pretty sure the Verge does not have one, but the Stratos does, so that's just something extra I thought I'd mention. I guess the two other major hardware differences between the Stratos and the Verge is the fact that the Verge has a microphone, so you can take calls, you can take phone calls directly from the watch itself, just like having a chat away here like this, and the Stratos is fully waterproof. So that's like the two differences. I mean, the Stratos does not have a microphone, so you can't take calls, and the Verge is not fully waterproof, so you cannot take it swimming. I guess finally, the last thing to talk about is battery life. Because it's very important for a smartwatch to have a good battery life. This is why it's basically the reason I avoid all Apple watches and Samsung watches. I mean, Samsung's not too bad, not as bad, but Apple watches, no, because I'm not going to be charging my watch every night. It just seems ridiculous to me. Don't even talk to me about it. Yeah, so both of these watches claim to last around about 5 days on a full charge. I will say that for the Verge, that is accurate. In fact, I've managed to make it last longer. For the Stratos, I would say 5 days is a bit of an, not an overestimation. I mean, you can get 5 days out of it, but I found that 4 is probably more accurate. It does seem to drain reasonably fast. I mean, even just doing this review, it's gone down by like 1%, and it's been, 15 minutes. I would say that the Verge battery lasts a little bit longer. I guess the final difference between the two is the operating system. Amazfit kind of put a new operating system in the Verge. I mean, the way it handles menus and how the watch works. And I mean, I'm just show you here what they but it's again a matter of preference. It won't make a huge difference to your life and to how you use the watch. For both watches, you can actually see quite a lot of data on the watch itself. So your heart rate, your sleep, how well you slept over the past few days. All that kind of stuff. So you can see information on the watch itself, but for the detailed information, you go to the app, which is the Amazfit Watch app, which is the app that both watches use, so there's no difference there, so I'm not going to go into it. So yeah, guys, that's my comparison between these two smartwatches, the Amazfit Verge and the Amazfit Stratos. I like both watches, I truly do. I can see myself using both of them. If I wanted to do a proper sports tracking like session, I really wanted to track my sport or some activity, then I would go for the Verge. If I wanted to go on a night out and wanted a cool watch that's going to be looking good and that I'm going to show off to my friends and people are going to look at it and be like, oh my god, what's that? Then I would wear the Stratos. I have both, so I can make that decision. I'm not saying you should buy both. Obviously, that's a bit ridiculous for most people, but yeah, you're going to have to decide which one is more important for you. So that's it, guys. I hope you have found this useful. I will just mention quickly that this channel has just reached 3,000 subscribers, or it just went over a day ago for me. It's probably going to be slightly over by the time you watch this video. Super excited about that. That's amazing. I really did not expect much to come from this channel at all when I started doing it. I've only been really doing it for the past 5 months or so, like on a regular basis, and to reach 3,000 subscribers in that time is awesome to me. I hope you are enjoying watching this, and I hope you find it useful. You can find where to buy both these watches for the lowest price that I found in the description below. Yeah, check that out, and also find a written review or a written comparison of both of these watches on my website below as well. So check that out if you want to read some more about these two. So apart from that, I'm gonna go now. I hope you found this useful, and I will see you next time. Bye.